Hi everyone, it's Jen again. Hope you had a good week. This week for me was just working on all the locations and the headquarters for basically the second portion of the gameplay, where it's more like a social simulator, similar, I guess, to Persona, if I were to make a comparison. As far as like my experience working in this type of sandbox or this style of gameplay, I think I was taking a lot from what I learned when I was making I've transmigrated as a supreme villainess, but I don't know what the hell to do because that game was like pretty ambitious for my knowledge of programming at the time. I basically didn't have any objects in that game, so everything was just like variables and conditionals, and it snowballed into a giant mess that was just so difficult to like parse with every day that I was adding to the gameplay that it became unmanageable for me and I had to quit that project. So learning from my mistakes from that game, but also kind of like knowing what made the game like interesting. I'm basically like taking the ideas that I didn't know how to manifest, like with the time management and some of the randomization of events, but like not so harsh. Mainly the randomization is more with like stat progression, stat gains, that sort of thing. Days are going to have like variables as far varying rates as far as like the market exchange goes, so there'll be maybe certain days that you'll want to like buy and sell things in order to try to earn money if you are one of those investor types. There is also going to be a lot of random events that happen at certain times, so those who may have tried, I've transmigrated as a supreme villainess. One of the things I think that made the game interesting was that there were a lot of like little secret scenarios, a lot of little goofy interactions that you could unlock by just being in the right place at the right time, because each character in the house had their own like set schedule that they like to do things at a certain time. So I will be going with that model going forward as well, with the 5 different characters. I should say 4 different characters because you're controlling the protagonist, so what you choose to do will be your own schedule, but the other 4 characters that you can build relationships with will be having like their own kind of like schedule pattern that you can try to match up with in order to pursue certain characters more than others, or just like try to unlock like goofy pointless optional conversations with the type of stuff that I find really fun and makes the world feel a little bit more lived in. That's the sort of stuff that I'm finding the most like interesting in this for this week's development, is that I finally got all the location backgrounds drawn, so that was a lot, and I have all my menus set up, and that was a lot, and those are probably my 2 like least favorite things to do. As anybody who's played Arcane Dice Wars, I apologize profusely for how awful the menus are, especially like trying to do the crafting and buying and selling menus were absolutely terrible. So I am trying my best to make the menus better than they were in Arcane Dice Wars, but that was really just barely functional, so I don't know if they're going to be anything great, but at least they should be easier to use. Oh, okay, so that said, menus have been made, and I was like really starting to drag my feet by the end of the week because I had a few rough days at work, and just again spending an entire week doing backgrounds and menus, which are my 2 least favorite things to develop, kind of got me feeling a little bit something. That was less than a positive attitude. And so I was coming into this weekend really hoping that I could just be like done, and that was like my attitude, was just like, I just want to be done with this. And as I was slogging through the last of the location menus yesterday, I was just not feeling good about like my mindset, my attitude, dragging my feet on getting the last room done, which I still haven't done yet, which I was planning on doing today. And I think I've said in like one of my previous videos that I generally try to like space out like the harder tasks with like easier tasks that I feel more confident in, such as like doing character art or character writing. I try to intersperse that so that I'm not doing something that is like, I guess like not eating broccoli like 7 days in a row. I like broccoli actually. What don't I like? Kale. It's not like eating kale 7 days in a row. Maybe I don't like broccoli enough to eat it 7 days in a row. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. You get the idea. Somewhere in there I want to throw in a piece of pizza or something tastier, right? Fried rice, I don't know. Basically, I got myself locked into this situation that I hadn't really planned out this portion of development that well, because this was more my stretch goal. I was really planning on trying to get the mission completed for Otomejam, and that was like my main goal. And finishing this social sim portion of the game, or at least having like this first day of the social sim portion of the game, wasn't in my original plan. So I think that if I hadn't been trying to create all the locations, setting up all the locations like basically within like a 2-week time frame, then I would have been able to mix it up with like adding more sprites and doing a bunch of those like goofy optional situations that I talk about that I like really enjoy doing. Along with like adding new locations and stuff, and get spread out, drawing all the backgrounds and setting up all the location menus over the course of a month, you know, like doing it for a few days and then going back to doing some of the stuff that I have a little bit more fun with, instead of trying to cram it in all at once. But since I need to get the locations done for like this framework was like the bare minimum needed to do anything in the social sim portion of the game, I sort of like pigeonholed myself into this timeline, which actually is not even like a big deal because again, it was optional. I didn't even have to do this. Granted, all of this is optional. I don't have to do Otomejam, but you know what I mean. I've set these goals for myself that I really wanted to try to accomplish, and so going into like this last few steps is a little bit like starting to fall into that carrot on the stick mentality where I'm not really enjoying the process, and I'm starting to just like look at the carrot or the finish line and be like, please just let me over the finish line. And I know this is where I do not do my best work, and I know this is where I start to like get into the mindset that will lead to burnout, because like when I'm not enjoying myself, when it's not like a decompression thing for me, is when it starts to feel like work, like drudgery. And I do have like the experience and the discipline to like easily like trudge through this. Like I have no doubt that I can get through and like make the deadlines and cross the finish line like I planned. At this point, you know, nothing short of like a catastrophic asteroid like hitting my house or something is gonna like really throw me off target. But what cost, you know, like why am I doing this anymore when I'm doing this for fun and to like relieve stress? If it's like causing me an extra burden, then this is where I can kind of go into that like autopilot, because I have trained myself over the decades of doing professional work and like being my own boss, that I can fall into just that habit of like, okay, well, I'm just going to drag myself, you know, across the finish line. We're just going to get it done because we're so close, but not enjoying myself. And like, why why get this far just to start like making it into a chore? Why sacrifice the enjoyment that I get to meet these arbitrary goals, these benchmarks that I've set for myself? So it's always like this kind of like teetering between like making goals for myself so that I can work on something that's complex like a game and get somewhere with it, but without like making those goals into something that end up sabotaging the whole point of why I'm doing this, which is for fun. So like, how do we balance this? How do we still like cross the finish line without having to like tap into this work grind mindset? Do we have to just sit back and like wait until the inspiration hits us and be like, okay, well, I don't feel like doing it right now, so I'm just going to like shove it off in a corner somewhere and till like the magic, the magical inspiration fairies come to me and like infuse me with like a love of like making menus and drawing backgrounds. Like that's probably never gonna happen. And to be honest, like I don't like to solve this problem by just like taking a break, even though that's kind of like what everybody tells me to do, because I know myself from previous like decades of experience that like taking a break, yeah, I might get bored enough that I'm finally like, okay, well, I guess I'm gonna do the backgrounds now because like I sat through like 20 hours of anime and I can't take it anymore, or whatever it is. Like, yeah, I guess I could bore myself into like exhausting all the possibilities of how I could waste my time, but like these days, like there's so much content out there that's like free and readily accessible. Like, can I really bore myself? I might just find a new hobby, I might just find a new niche interest that I never knew existed out there, rabbit hole after rabbit hole. Not like saying that would be like the worst thing ever, but at least when you get to be my age, you start to realize that I might be running out of time for how long I can pursue these types of dreams like as hard as I can go, because I know my body and my mind are going to start breaking down. So these might be like my best years where I have like all the experience of like the decades of like honing my skills behind me, as well as like the clarity of mind and like the physical ability to like still do this stuff without like being in chronic pain. So yeah, anyways, I guess what I'm trying to say is that I don't want to take a break and just like cross my fingers that like inspiration's gonna hit me, because I work better when I have routines and I make something a habit. And because this is my source of decompression and self-expression, like losing that even for like a week or whatever, I don't know what people would take for a vacation, it feels empty very fast. Like I can take a break for like maybe a day and I can just like catch up on reading. Reading is usually the thing I like to do now, is because it takes me away from the screens and sitting at my desk. But even that, like I'm a pretty fast, voracious reader, so I will get through whatever it is that I'm interested in, usually within a day, and then it's back to my comfort place, which is game development, even when it's doing things like backgrounds and menus that I don't like. So anyways, making this long story a little bit shorter and just giving you a window into my probably bizarre way of handling things. How do I motivate myself to do these tasks that I don't like doing? I make more work for myself. So it's super counterproductive, but that's how I decided that I was going to add some optional, just random events to even just this one evening. I'm giving the player like a few hours of free time before they have to go through like the nighttime routine, And that will be the end of the demo to kind of tie it up in a neat little bow as I like going to sleep. And in these few hours, I think it's like probably around like 5 hours that the player will have, and like 2 hours is going to be consumed by travel, so they're really probably only going to have a chance to like go to one sector, maybe a few locations within that sector. There are going to be like these 3 character driven random events of like the characters living their own lives, being in a certain location that you can kind of run into them and get a little peek into like who they are when they're not fighting in the dungeons. So yeah, that's the type of stuff that like I really needed to intersperse with like the backgrounds and the menus this whole time. But I didn't come to this realization, I didn't have this like epiphany until like yesterday. So today I'm taking a break. Well, actually I already finished the backgrounds and I already finished all the menus except for like the ones for the activities that the protagonist can do in their bedroom. So I'm going to hold off on doing that. I was going to do it today and then be done, but I'm going to hold off on doing that, and I'm going to spend a few extra days just making these goofy little quirky character interactions that I just have so much fun with. And then I'm going to go back to doing the last room out of, I don't remember how many locations. These are the different sectors here. These are the labels for the different rooms. I guess some of these haven't been implemented yet, like the clothing and decor store. I'm not going to have those open at all. We're going to save that for after the demo. But yeah, this is how I organize this whole, like, I guess second half of the game. I just gave it its own folder. I gave it its own, like, functions file, as well as its own, like, screen files. And each one of the locations has its own label and its own like menus. So that's what that is, and that I did, I guess, kind of like power through over this week. But I'm gonna spend the rest of this weekend and the beginning of next week just making these goofy little fun things that I'm just gonna indulge in, and then the second half of the week I'm gonna go back and finish Amber's room, which is like the last location. And plan on having the demo out. I'm thinking probably Juneteenth would be a nice way to celebrate that day off. So hope you all have a great week, and yeah, don't forget to enjoy the process. I almost forgot. Bye now.